later. Here at the Frida Cinema, please give a big hand to the Frida Cinema, everybody. My name's Cody, I'm the captain of the Nostalgic Nebula. We are presenting the special screening tonight with the Frida Cinema. We've been here for almost 9 years and running. Please be sure to follow us on at Nostalgic Nebula on the socials, Instagram and elsewhere, as well as the Frida Cinema. Be sure to tag them in any pictures and all of that. We want to keep this place running forever because if you look at the programming, the party goes on all year long. Give them a big hand. They're all volunteers out there. Everybody out there, give them a big hand. They're going to be cleaning up after us, so don't forget to throw your trash away in the trash. Anyways, folks, I want to welcome to the stage Catherine Mary Stewart, everybody. All the way from New York?
New York, yeah.
I wouldn't miss this. I wore my Apple shoes. That's what I decided to call them.
All right, fantastic. It's been quite a while. Let's before we get into like the auditioning and getting started with the production, could you tell us a little bit about your upbringing with the arts or performing? What was going on before you made your big audition for the app?
My grand debut. Yeah, this was the first movie I ever did. But so I am from Canada. I came up with the name Moose Jaw, by the way. They had I think they had us from like Toronto or something. And I'm like, Toronto's a big city. You want them from the sticks. But Menachem Golan, the director, didn't understand that. He just thought anything from Canada was small. So I said, why don't you have them from Moose Jaw? Because I had a friend who's actually from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And so that stuck, and they mentioned it many times, which I love that. So anyway, so I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta in Canada, and I was a dancer. I trained as a dancer there. I was in a company called Synergy. We toured around a lot, and when I graduated from high school, I moved to London and trained at a school called the London Studio Centre, which was a performing arts school, but at that time, they just opened, they've expanded, they're a huge school now, but it was primarily dance, but they also offered acting and singing and all that stuff. And I also did, theater in school my whole life. I've always been pretty animated, and my mother kind of picked up on that, and she kind of, because I come from a very academic family, and that was not my forte. So my mother really is responsible for me getting into performing in general. So yeah, I started out, my plan was to be a dancer, and I went to London to dance. And literally, one day I was going to class, and a couple of my fellow students were kind of going in the opposite direction. And I'm like, where are you going? Class is that way. And I said, well, we heard about this audition, and so we thought we'd just go ahead and see what that was like. So I decided to tag along, because I'd never done anything like that before, outside of Edmonton. And it was a cattle call audition. Nigel Lithgow was the choreographer. He created like So You Think You Can Dance and a bunch of other things like that. He's made a huge name for himself, and I think he kind of tries to separate himself from the show. I don't know why. But I was in this cattle call dance audition, and Menachem, the director, saw me and pulled me out of the crowd and asked me if I could act. And of course I said, yeah. And he had me read for the role of BB. And then he said, can you sing? And I'm like, sure. And I was cast, in this lead role in a feature film. And the adventure began, We ended up shooting it in Berlin and other parts of West Germany, but at that time, it was 1979, the wall was still up. I was telling the story to Cody that, you know, you could go into East Berlin on the other side of the wall, but nobody who lived there could come the other way. And Joss Ackland and I, one day, we took the train into East Berlin, went through Checkpoint Charlie, and it was the weirdest experience because West Berlin is just this sort of island that's surrounded by Eastern Germany, and you cross into East Berlin. West Berlin was like a circus. It was just like party all night long. It just was it vibrated kind of. And in East Berlin, it was just dead. It was like nobody was around. There was no foliage. It was gray. It was such a stark contrast. And when Joss and I spent the day there, and on the way back, we got on the train, and he realized he misplaced his passport, which of course freaked him out. And it was I was literally like following him around because he was like going crazy looking for his passport. He did eventually find it, but that was a weird experience. At any rate, it's kind of off topic there, but yeah. So this is how I got into acting.
And so there are a lot of fantastic, you know, this whole film is fantastic, but it takes itself very seriously. Could you tell us a little bit about, like, just when you were reading the script and, like, you know, seeing what this film was going to be like, and then ultimately being there on stage with these sets? Like, you know, not everybody's first movie is, you know, something like The Wizard of Oz, right?
Well, I had no perspective at all. I'd never been on the set of a movie. I had no idea what anything meant. I remember reading the script and reading it over and over and over again. It was captivating for me. But I had no way to translate what it was going to look like on screen. I just thought this was the coolest thing. By the time we shot this thing, I knew every line, everybody's line, you know, off by heart. I knew all the lyrics of the songs and everything, because I was just sort of fascinated by the whole thing. So, having zero experience in this area, I had no clue of what I was getting myself into. I knew it was legitimate. Through the school, London Studio Center, they introduced me to an agent. So it was sort of legitimized in my mind that way. I wasn't just going into this thing blindly. I mean, it was a legitimate feature film. The budget was pretty large. It was like something like $5 million, and in 1979, that was quite a bit. But again, I just sort of went in blindly and just kind of rode the wave, and I loved every second of it. I loved it. I had the best time.
Do you have any particular favorite scenes or musical numbers that you filmed?
I love them all. I loved Cry For Me. I loved all that stuff, standing in the wind. And they kept saying, stop sort of bouncing up and down to the music because it looks really weird. It looks sexy. Yeah, I mean, Speed was so much fun. That was really challenging because I had to wear these boots, and literally the heels were like 4 or 5 inches high. And it was really hard to keep your balance, and we shot it over a couple of days of just dancing all day long. And for years afterwards, I had no feeling in my toes. For some reason, because of, well, I'm sure there's a reason, but I'm sure it was the pressure on my, feet cutting off my nerves or something. But it was again, really super fun to do. I mean, I was living like this vicarious life as a rock and roller. It's super fun.
And now, out there, you have a lot of cool photographs from your different movies, including this one. One of them's from a deleted scene.
Yes, well, I appear briefly when they do the hell scene, you know. I appear briefly in this bodysuit with a sort of strategically placed flowers, but it was like a skin-colored bodysuit. But the scenes that didn't make it to the movie were, because there's this sort of Adam and Eve kind of story going on. Very subtle, I think. But there was a scene where I sort of, as Eve, emerge out of the ground, come up, like, sit up out of the dirt, and then I'm like this innocent thing, and I sort of skip through this Garden of Eden kind of a place. And the Alfie character, who's obviously Adam, he has a scene where he kind of breaks out of a rock. And then there's a whole thing with Mr. Tops walking on water and singing some song. But what's really weird in this scene also is there's like a bunch of animals and dinosaurs and all sorts of weirdo things going on. It was a huge scene in a studio. I mean, it took I'm sure it was very expensive to set up. But yeah, the picture that's out there of me in this little bodysuit is me just like coming out of having risen from the ground, and I'm just like in awe of the world, I guess. Or something. I don't know.
And I'm going to take questions from the audience in just a couple questions. So go ahead and think of any that you might want. I'll go run out there with the microphone in a little bit. So this film from 1980, you know, sometimes people ask people, you know, hey, do you all still hang out? And usually the answer is no, because people move on to projects, but you still keep in touch with a lot of the cast in this.
In this one, in the Apple? Well, Rachel, who played Snake, is that what? Snake.
Yes.
Snake? Shake.
But he's also a snake.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking of, him as the snake. Yeah, Rachel, he and I have kept in touch. It's amazing with social media who you can get back in touch with after so many years. And actually Alan Love as well, who now he played Alfie. No, what? Pandy. Pandy's the guy, right? Yeah. Or is it Dandy? No, Pandy. And he was, you know, also the cast, like Alan Love and George Gilmore and Grace Kennedy, they were all legitimately big music stars in the UK. At any rate, I've kept in touch with him through social media. He lives in Indonesia or somewhere now. That doesn't matter because I can't remember the name of the show, but he was on one of those cooking shows. Who's that guy who is so mean to everybody?
Gordon?
Remember the show about the guy, he would go into their restaurant and tell them how awful it was? What's that show? I forget what the show is.
Kitchen Nightmares?
Kitchen Nightmares.
What's that?
Kitchen Nightmares.
Kitchen Nightmares, okay. Alan Love had a restaurant and he was on the show and what's his name was just ripping him apart. And I was like, that looks really familiar to me. I think actually that's how I got back in touch with him. I somehow found him on social media. I said, I just saw you on Kitchen Nightmares. Anyway, now he's living in Indonesia.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. You were pointing out to me how large the child is at the end of the film. After 1 year.
Yeah.
After 1 year.
They've been with us for over a year. And there's this 6-year-old we're carrying around. That was the son of Kobe Recht and Iris, who Kobe appeared as many different characters in this, but he was responsible for a lot of the music and things like that in the movie. But that was their kid. We needed a kid, so they said, take ours.
Did you get to take anything home from set or wardrobe?
I did. Actually, I took quite a bit of wardrobe, like the boots and things like that. But I have to say, I don't know, I don't have them anymore. I don't know, I've moved so many times that they just, at some point you're like, do I really need to carry these things around with me? I kind of wish I had something, but I have a ton of photographs of things. I just recently put together this whole Apple album of photographs, like big, huge, hard copy photos. It's sort of fun.
More book. You go on the convention circuit. Do you see a lot of people coming up with costumes and all sorts of?
Well, only once did someone come up with costumes. It's fairly rare that people will say, "I love you for the apple." But one girl just showed up in the Speed outfit, like same fabric and everything, and I was just like, it was amazing, and I have all these pictures of her with me. That was a number of years ago. It's like, I don't know how many years ago, but it was a while ago now. But yeah, it was very cool. And also the film has been screened at the Lincoln Center in New York, like twice. One time they had all the BIM marks for everybody. I was saying to Cody, I said, we should have made up a bunch of BIM marks. There is a couple in here, by the way, who have BIM tattoos on their arms, and they're permanent. I was like, those aren't permanent, right? No, they are. We've been talking about it for 15 years. So wow, that's the ultimate compliment as far as I'm concerned. And then there was so this was a Canon film, and there was a Canon Films retrospective at Lincoln Center, and this screened, and we came up, Menachem Golan, the director, and Yorm Globus, his cousin who produced it, and I were on stage doing, and I hadn't seen them for, I don't know, 30 years or something like that, so that was pretty cool to see them. Menachem passed away soon after that, I think. Yeah, it was a trip. And also just, so the genesis of this whole thing, so to speak, is, sorry about that, is Menachem was a very, very successful filmmaker in Israel, and he wanted to break into the American film market. And it was the era of these kind of rock musicals, Xanadu and Rocky Horror Picture Show and that kind of stuff. And he thought that this was going to break him into the business, and he would be, rich and stuff, I guess. But it would break him into Hollywood. And so you talk about it, what makes it sort of even kitschier in a way is that they were totally serious. This was like going to be the big movie of their careers, like breaking into the film industry in America. And so it was all taken very, very seriously. They spent a lot of money on costumes and music. London Symphony Orchestra or something is the background music, or the orchestral portion. They spent a lot of money on this thing. Not on me, because I never done anything before, but the locations, we were in Berlin, we were in Baden-Baden, we were in Hamburg, we traveled around. We rehearsed for weeks and weeks with all the dancing in London before. So, they put a lot of money into this movie, hoping that it would be a huge success, and it was not. But it's got its own little iconic thing going.
That's all right. Yeah.
That's all right. You know what? I love it. I love it. I can't help it.
And you love it.
Yeah.
I think those audience questions for now. That one popped up first, and then I'll come back right away.
Did you get to know Bulldog at all? And any romance there?
Yeah, Derek Dedman. Yes. Oh my gosh, we became really good friends for a while there. Yeah, he was a great guy, a terrific, really super nice guy.
Hi, Mary.
Hey, hi, Brian.
So, as you said, they took this film very seriously, and it didn't get very well loved in Hollywood. I read in the Nostalgic Nebula documentary that they threw, records actually at the screen and whatever too. But obviously, you have cult fans, and this is a cult movie
Yeah.
with like Lost Horizon, Can't Stop the Music, Grease, Phantom of the Paradise. Why do you think that this falls in the same category as all those? Because obviously it does in my mind. Why do you think in your mind does it fall in the same cult category?
That's a good question. Well, I think for its day, for instance, it's very kitschy, but I mean, for instance, the music I think was, actually, I loved the music in the day. It was really, really well produced, and the people that wrote it and arranged it and all that stuff were very, very talented. There's something about, like, if they were trying to be kitschy or whatever you describe this as, it wouldn't have worked, And the fact that but there was also a lot of humor involved with it, obviously. Some of it, especially at the very beginning, she's made for me. All these people dancing in the background cracks me up. So, I mean, I think it appeals to a very specific audience. You guys are wacko, apparently. But it really does. I think that people just, it's unusual. You don't see this kind of film very often, and I think people just are entertained by it.
Good answer.
So I'm not a religious person, but my upbringing was very religious.
Uh-huh.
So I just wanted to know, obviously this is a story of original sin, Adam and Eve. Did you get like a lot of religious backlash for doing it? And how did you guys address that?
I really didn't. But it was when it was first released, it was very short-lived. He talks about when it was introduced at the Montreal Film Festival in 1980. And it was the first year of the Montreal Film Festival. And the story that I heard was the guy who organized the whole film festival asked his son what movie he thinks should premiere the film festival. And his son said, this one. And so it drew a huge audience and everything. And they handed out records, like vinyl records, to everybody as a take-home thing. And yeah, the reaction was pretty awful. They were throwing the records at the screen. And Menachem would have said this, he said it, he was literally suicidal after the screening because it had such a bad reaction. So my point is, its life was so short that I don't think there was any time for people to go, wait a minute, this is, sacrilegious somehow. So I never felt any backlash from it.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for joining us again tonight. This is so awesome. I just spoke earlier, and actually, corrected me, it's been like 20 or 25 years since a Fateful New Art screening, and I'm just wondering, can you describe a little bit about your reaction to years and years later, as you started to hear, hey, this movie is starting to screen at places, and midnight screenings were happening. I'll speak for myself. Part of why I think this is a cult film is, as people discover it, it's one of these films that's got such scope and such incredible music that it's like, how have I not heard of this? How did this movie get so under the radar back then? So I guess it's a two-part question. Number one is, how was it? Was there a theatrical release, when it came out past the film festival? And then two is, can you talk a little bit about when you started to hear and what your reaction was that the film was starting to play, that a Blu-ray was coming out, that people were really interested in reviving this movie?
Honestly, I'm not sure if it had a theatrical release or not. I don't know. I think it just kind of like faded after the Montreal Film Festival. I was living in New York, let's say around, well, the mid-2000s, say. And I got a call from, I think it was Entertainment Magazine, wanting to interview me and saying, did you know that this movie was like this cult thing in like New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, all the big cities, and there's these midnight screenings and everything, and I was like gobsmacked, you know. I was like, what? Because it'd been so long since I'd heard anything about it at all. And this person went on and on about how it's become this cult thing. And they said there's going to be a screening in New York at this place called the Sunshine Cinema, I think it's called, which has since closed down. Uh-oh. No, it was this little theater on Houston Street in New York City, and he said there's going to be a screening there, and so my husband and I went to it, and we sort of sat in the back, and I had really short hair at that time. Nobody recognized me, put it that way, but it was incredible. It was like sort of a la Rocky Horror Picture Show. People were dressed up, they were singing the songs, they were doing this whole thing. I was just blown away. So that was the first I'd heard of that. In the mid-2000s, we shot it in 1979, so you can imagine how shocked and surprised I was. Yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah. But I really do get a kick. I do get a kick out of it, I have to say. I was saying that I've been in touch with Rachel, and so I just thought of this today. I thought, what if he's living in California? Because he's lived in a bunch of different places, and he showed up tonight. Wouldn't that be so cool? So I emailed him, but I didn't hear back. I think he may be in the UK right now, so if he is, he's asleep. But yeah, it's just very dear to my heart, and I had such a lovely experience on it, except for the time where I this is brand new for me, and I missed my name on a call sheet. I didn't think I was working for some reason. I can't explain why. And I was mentioning that West Berlin was like a circus. I mean, there was clubs and things open all night long, every night. And there's a large group of dancers, and they used to go out and just have so much fun. So one night I decided to go out with all these dancers. We stayed out all night long. I went to places that I'd never been to before nor since. And I walked back into the hotel where we were staying the next morning about 7:30, and there was an AD or a PA or someone freaking out, panicking, wondering where I was, and I'm like, I'm not working today. Yes, you are. You've missed your call time. You've got to come with me. So I don't even know what I did. I guess I just went to the set and hadn't had a wink of sleep. And actually, the picture the scene that didn't make the movie was that day, and I was in makeup, and Menachem, who could be quite gruff, I guess, he came down into the makeup room and he just started yelling at me. He's going, "You'll never work in this business again!" He was saying all this stuff to me, and I was like, "Oh!" And the thing about it was that I never really expected to work in the business anyway. So it wasn't, he just more scared me than made me panic or anything like that. Oh, he was so mad. Because also in those days, they were shooting on 35mm film, and very, very expensive. Yeah, it costed a lot of money to wait for me, I guess. But oh, that was my Hollywood moment. You will never work in this business again. Proved him.
I have one more question. Okay, good.
Hi, I collect a lot of physical media, and the Apple on Blu-ray is out of print. Have you heard of any new release coming out, maybe a 4K or something like that? Usually they ask to do new interviews or whatever.
I haven't heard anything. There is a documentary about Canon films, which is also interesting. In the movie, Boogaloo, he's telling Bibi, your record is up for sale or whatever. We're selling your record now. She says, how can you sell the record? We haven't even made one yet. And he says, well, that's what you do. You sell it first and then you make it. That was exactly what Canon Films did. That's how they sold they would go to Cannes or something like that and promote and sell these ideas for movies that they hadn't made. What's that?
They always had a poster.
Right? Yes, you're exactly right. But that is what they did. So that made it into the movie. I mean, this documentary is really great because they also worked with some really, really good actors. And what they would do is they would come up with a concept. They would, say so-and-so is gonna be starring in this, Charles Bronson or something. They would tell Charles Bronson, we're gonna give you, $10 million to do this movie. And the budget for the movie itself was, nothing. So all their budget would go into the star. They would have the concept. They'd sell the concept at the movie, film festivals, and then they'd make the movie. So it's interesting to see that concept in this movie itself. They were Boogaloo.
Yeah, actually, that's what she was saying before. It's called Electric Boogaloo, the Canon story. It's available on YouTube, so just FYI. And as you just touched base before, you said that when you said you'll never work in this town again, you proved it wrong, obviously. And between, yes, you can go plug for that. But not mentioning the Apple real quickly, I mean, you make so many great movies, The Last Starfighter, which is tomorrow here, The Weekend at Bernie's, and so forth. What is your favorite all-time role that you've done in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a hard question to answer because I feel like I've been really lucky to have played lots of different characters, and as an actor, that's what the goal is. There's one concept of, you're a product and you fit into a box, and this is how you're gonna get hired, and so you've gotta always maintain that sort of image and things, and my philosophy has always been, I would never want to sort of be a very specific character. I want to play as many different kinds of things as possible. And I feel like I've been pretty lucky in that. And so every role that I've done has a different approach, has a slightly different character involved. They're just different, and I love that. I mean, The Last Starfighter was just such a lovely experience. It was the first movie I did in Hollywood, and it was this sweet little movie. Nick Castle, the director, was just a lovely guy who was very empathetic to us young actors, Robert Preston. I mean, it was like a dream job. And Dan O'Herlihy as Greg. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but they were just so, and also, I'm just saying, it was an amazing experience to work with all these wonderful actors, and all the character actors in the trailer park and stuff were just awesome. And Lance Guest and I are still really good friends. I stayed overnight at his place last night. He's married and has a wife, so I had my own room. But no, he has a little sort of apartment in his house that's kind of separate, and he invites me to stay there if I want to. But we're really great friends, and I think that comes off in some of these movies, the relationship between the real people. You can see that there's sort of some integrity there. So that I hold dear to my heart for sure. I love Night of the Comet because I loved playing that character, Reg, who it was kind of a bit of a departure for me because I was always like the girl next door, you know, Bibi and Maggie, and then I got to play Reg. And that was fun because I felt like it was sort of more who I am. But, you know, Weekend at Bernie's, it was a comedy, which was great. Mischief, which is another movie that sort of went under the radar a little bit, but it's set in the 50s, so that was really cool, just doing a period thing, you know. Every role, every project is its own entity and unique experience, and I just love it. I love it.
Well, with that, I think that's pretty good to.
Oh, there's a.
Oh,
one
oh.
way in the back.
No,
Way in the back there.
there we go.
Come on. Come on, Gordy.
Okay, Catherine, you made the fact you did not know if the movie was released or not. I distinctly remember the movie Apple was theatrically released in the United States in late 1980. I saw ads for it in the newspaper.
Oh, okay.
Now here's my question. Since the Apple is getting cult classic status, and you mentioned other movies from 1980 such as Can't Stop the Music and Xanadu, which are now also cult classics. I must have been a big Xanadu fan. Did you ever see those two movies? What did you think of those?
I actually never did. I know. I know. You're right. I know I should. Yeah, it's. I'm trying to think. I did see Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I really liked. I loved it. But you know, it was also a time I was getting into movies and things like that, and I really didn't go to a lot of movies at first. It's so sort of weird that way. You know, I was so busy, and I was also traveling. When I did the Apple, I was living in London, and I didn't know what was going to happen with this movie, and or for me as an actor. My goal was really to be a dancer, so I was back and forth a little bit, and then finally. Menachem actually invited me to come to LA, and he sort of introduced me to a bunch of agents, and that's what kind of got the ball rolling in terms of the acting career. But I was, I mean, yeah, I was traveling a lot, I was dancing, you know, training basically, and I wasn't watching a lot of movies, oddly enough, yeah.
Let's see. 2 more questions, I guess. Do you have any fun Vladik Sherbel stories to share?
Oh God, he was such a character. Oh man, he's so great in this. I feel like. Yeah, he kind of kept to himself a little bit, but I do remember one time, I don't know why, I was in his room in the hotel, and I forget what the circumstance was, but he was really into perfume. He was like inviting me to smell all these different kinds of perfumes that he was discovering in Berlin. And I was like, okay. You know, I was Bibi. I in many ways, I still am. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I was cast, is because I look at that, I'm like, yeah, that's just me. And in fact, I remember a friend of mine saw the movie, and they're like, what's so great about that? That's just you. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of.
And final one before we get out of here. You're in the produce aisle. What kind of apple do you pick?
Honeycrisp.
Right answer. All right, before we get out of here, where can we find you on the social media?
Well, pretty much anything Catherine Mary Stewart. that's just about it. You know, Facebook, Catherine Mary Stewart. If people even do Facebook, I'm old, so yes, I do. All of them are just Catherine Mary Stewart. X is whatever. Catherine Mary Stewart was too long for X, Twitter in the day, so I ended up just putting CMSALL. Because it's like a combination of my initials and my husband's first part of his last name. So, but I mean, if you put I'm not that good at this stuff, at Catherine Mary Stewart, I try to stay on top of it and answer as many things as I can. But I mean, if you really do want to get hold of me, I have an email address, info@catherinemarystewart.com. I have a website, catherinemarystewart.com. You can always check out IMDb to see what I'm up to. Yeah, I'm about to go into rehearsals in a play, which is going to be super fun. Yeah, I am excited about that because I started out as a dancer. I'm so comfortable on the stage, like just moving around a stage in front of an audience. So I've done theater before, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Do you have a favorite play or musical?
Jesus Christ Superstar.
We love it up there. We love it. People love
Yeah,
it.
I love that movie because when I first saw it, again, going back to my dancing roots, I was really into dance. And I just loved the choreography. I loved the music. And I do not come from a religious background. And I was like, oh, that's what that's all about. I mean, it was literally sort of an education for me. But to this day, I just love that album. I love the movie. I really, really do. Yeah.
Everybody, the Apple tonight. We're coming back tomorrow. We're gonna do The Last Starfighter. Catherine's gonna be here. Chris Ebert, as well as Lance Guest. They're gonna be doing signatures and autographs. Be sure to come back and please give a round of applause.
Thank you so much for coming, you guys. I really, really appreciate it.